Are you a cat lover who loves the idea of owning your own cat cafe? Then this is the podcast for you. Join me, Angeli Rodriguez, owner of the Woody Whisker Cat Cafe and author of the book Drinks and Whiskers, as I walk you through my tips and tricks to help you open a successful cat cafe. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Drinks and Whiskers podcast, the place to be to get the inside scoop on what it's like to open and run a successful cat cafe. I'm your host, Angeli Rodriguez, and I am so excited to introduce today's guest on the podcast, Tabitha Kucera. Tabitha is the owner of Chirrups and Chatter, a behavior solution consultation business for cats, dogs, and their people. Tabitha is one of only 30 veterinary technician behavior specialists in the world. She's passionate about promoting both awareness about cat behavior and compassionate, fear-free handling. When she's not running a successful consulting business and helping her many clients and their pets overcome severe behavior challenges, she competes in ultra trail running events. Welcome to the show, Tabitha, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for that awesome intro.
So, how did you get started with helping cats and their behavior issues?
Long story short, I'm a veterinary technician and I have been for over 15 years, and I worked in general practice for about 12 years. And in that time, as you can imagine, I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of cats and their caregivers, and I've also worked in animal welfare for even longer than that. And I not to be a bummer, but I met and euthanized a lot of cats the same day. And to be fair, by the time the caregivers recognized that their cats were experiencing some symptoms, the most humane thing to do was to let them go peacefully because the disease processes were so progressed at that point that we couldn't keep that animal comfortable. So that was one of the things that would happen sometimes that got me thinking these poor caregivers because they were really struggling. Obviously, the cats, us as veterinary professionals. But then I also had a lot of people in animal welfare, just society, in vet med talk about cat behavior concerns. And I would hear how even people that love cats utilize and say some pretty harmful myths
Yes.
and stereotypes to describe cats, like they're mysterious, they're spiteful, all these things that I'm sure
Yeah.
people don't mean any harm in, but are really problematic and dangerous. So I
Mhm.
was like, I like to ask why, because I know most humans are awesome, and none of us know everything. So I went and started looking for more information about cat behavior. And this was a while ago, but to be fair, I have more access to resources than most people because I was a veterinary professional. I attended conferences and I realized that there wasn't much, especially up-to-date evidence-based
Right.
information about
Right.
cat behavior. And then I was like all these light bulbs went off and I was like, no wonder so many caregivers are struggling. So many shelters are struggling with these behavior issues because unfortunately, let's be honest, misbehaving is one of the most dangerous things an animal can do. And commonly end up in shelters, or in many cases, the door just opens. Like everyone's like, I've my cat came to me. That's most people's
Yes.
story, right?
Yep, that is true.
Um, so I was like, oh, this is making sense. Also, that cats' pain symptoms and things like that aren't as known. So caregivers, it's hard for them to recognize those symptoms. So that's what got me down that path. And then also, I was low stress handling certified, and there was an amazing veterinarian who started that called Sophia Yin, who is unfortunately not with us anymore. So I
Ah,
was already learning how to interact and handle my patients in a more compassionate way from a more individualized standpoint. So that was another thing I noticed that was very misunderstood about cats, the way we were taught as veterinary professionals to handle cats, which has gotten a lot better. But
yeah.
I'll be honest, I haven't utilized the techniques I was taught in tech school from a handling perspective with cats or dogs in over 10 years. Um,
Wow,
so I
really?
know that's like a long story short, but that's kind of what got me down this path. And then I was like, this is my jam.
I love it.
Um,
Yeah.
and of course, fearful animals and behavior is a big thing in vet med and in animal welfare, and there are minimal resources. So
Yes.
I became that person at the clinic.
Uh-huh.
And then I continued to learn more. And then I finally decided, after obtaining tons of credentials, and I still had imposter syndrome, to start my own cat and dog behavior consulting business. And that was, I think, over 7 years ago. And it's mind
Wow.
blowing to think about. And now the word successful is weird to me to talk about, but um, I have a really successful consulting business, but I also do organizational consulting. I speak at conferences. It's so awesome to connect with other veterinary professionals and animal welfare professionals and people like you, of course. And then I get to provide resources and make cats and dogs' lives better, which then in turn helps to make or humans' lives better. And
Yes.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else now. It's crazy to think about, but that's kind of what led me down this path.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that's amazing that you found a problem and you wanted to solve it in a humane, wonderful way. That's kind of what cat cafe owners are trying to do. Like there's a overabundance of homeless cats, and we're trying to like help find them homes in a more creative way and a more humane way where they're not stuck in cages. And so I think we have a lot in common there. And I'm fascinated by what you said. Like, what are some of like maybe like the top two or three myths that about cat behavior that you have found?
I think one of the biggest ones is the spiteful comment.
Uh-huh.
The language we use to describe, I mean, to be fair, each other,
Uh-huh.
but also animals can be really dangerous. And I'm all about ideally avoiding labels,
Right.
and instead describing behavior, which means you have to understand body language. And even if you don't, like if a
Hmm.
client's like, my cat's a butthead, or
Right.
even a veterinary professional may say that. Um,
Right.
or my cat's spiteful, I understand they have a different background than me. So instead of like judging or shaming them, which is never appropriate, I'll say, what behaviors are you observing that make you feel that way? So
Right.
by just saying that simple sentence, I'm allowing them to be more empathetic towards their cat,
Right.
as well as think more critically,
Yeah.
and kind of take this blame because my cat knows no, cats don't feel spite. I love humans so much. I love kids. I love
Yeah.
humans. I love animals. But spite and guilt and those things are human things. But as you
Hmm.
can imagine, when someone says my cat is spiteful, kind of takes them away from it.
Yeah.
They're more likely, even if they love or care about that cat, to not approach it appropriately. Like, I'm just going to let my cat out because they're house soiling. When
Yeah.
your cat is house soiling because they're suffering from medical and or behavioral, most of the time both
Right.
concerns, and they're not reaching out to people like me or contacting their veterinarian because they're
Hmm.
like, my cat knows. Or they're
Yeah.
reaching out to the shelter and the shelter doesn't have the resources or staff to appropriately address that either,
Uh-huh.
like a vicious circle. So the biggest thing is cats aren't spiteful. And if you hear someone saying that, don't judge or shame them. Just say, I understand it could feel like that sometimes. And,
Right.
empathize with them and say, what behaviors are you? And hey, here's some great, credentialed behavior professionals, which are also a bit limited with cats, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Uh, Here are some resources to help at least get them in the right direction so they're not on groups
Yeah.
or TikTok or blogs. And I mean
Yeah.
that in the kindest way, but there's
Yeah.
some pretty problematic things about behavior. And I understand why someone Googles, but you as a cat cafe owner talking to someone who's coming in and might just say something randomly, you
Right.
can make a huge difference by just saying, I understand it feels like that. But
Yeah.
actually, and here are some helpful. So, hey, we want them to learn more. Having a list of evidence-based, animal welfare positive resources,
Mm.
it can
Yeah.
be, oh my gosh, a game changer. So I think
Okay.
that's a big one. Also, that they're, which I'm sure you as cat cafe owners know this, but that they're like mysterious and aloof and don't need vet care. And that's a big thing too. They're not it's funny because the more I learn about cats, understandably,
Yeah.
everything they do makes sense. Even behaviors that humans sometimes don't like.
Okay.
I get more information, I look at the environment, consider context, but in many cases, I can understand why what's motivating these cats to do this, or do these behaviors.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that cats do need vet care, because
Oh,
ideally,
definitely. Yes.
yeah, if we're catching things earlier, preventative care not only keeps that cat happier, but actually you save a lot of money
Oh,
because
definitely.
we're catching
Yes.
things
Yeah.
earlier.
Right.
So I think that's the second one. Like, or I can just leave for 5 days with food and with some food and water, which really gets me.
Yeah.
Um, and because again, that kind of like they're mysterious, whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
It's normal for them to hide, and hiding is a natural coping mechanism, of
Uh-huh.
course. But if a cat is hiding all the time,
Right.
that could be a huge sign of pain.
Sign.
One of the common
Oh.
signs that we see that a cat's painful, but also, of
Uh-huh.
course, stress and fear. And a lot of people are like, my cat just lives in the basement. That's just the way it is. And I'm like, actually,
Yeah.
that's not just the way it is. There are a lot of
Yeah.
things you can do to help. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes that's probably the third one, that like cats can't be trained. Unfortunately, that's even among cat lovers. I'm seeing a lot of these stereotypes kind of get spread out more. Cats can
Uh-huh.
be trained. All my cats are clicker trained.
Uh-huh.
I didn't start getting into behavior until they were older, because that's like,
Okay.
and everyone's like old dogs. I'm like, I'm 40 and I'm still learning. I'm gonna be 90, hopefully, and still learning. You don't stop learning. Like,
Yeah.
that's not a thing. Um,
Right.
but again, it's something I hear about cats and dogs all the time.
Uh-huh.
But cats can be trained, and I'm gonna approach their behavior just like I do a dog's or even a human's. Behaviors serve a function. I always joke and say, always ask WTF, which is what's the function?
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. I like that one.
Because again, I don't expect you to know maybe what to do, which
Uh-huh.
is okay. But if you're approaching it like that, it automatically gets you out of that, like my cat's being a dick thing, which is another thing I commonly hear, which
Yes.
I get it. If you're just talking to your friends, like
I'm
we can all
guilty of
say my
that.
friends,
I'm guilty of saying that
yeah,
sometimes.
my friends
Yeah.
being a dick, like I totally get that.
Yeah.
But especially if you're a cat cafe owner or a vet
Yeah.
professional or in any context, honestly, I'm probably
Yeah.
extra sensitive to that because of my background.
Uh-huh.
But you definitely want to avoid that language. And some people are like, Tabitha, you're a buzzkill. But I'm seeing what that language results in, and it's
Yeah.
sad. It's it's
Okay.
it's
Well,
really sad.
that's helpful. That's helpful that you're telling us that now because we kind of have jokes around like too, like we'll have of course different cats, different personalities in the cafe. We just recently had one that was really trying to be an escape artist and really just always trying to get out into the hallway, and that's dangerous because she can get outside in our space. And so we always joked around that she was just trying to escape because she hated it there. We finally did have to send her back to the rescue because we didn't like she almost got out of the
You
door
were
and we're
worried
like
about her safety,
we were
totally.
worried about her safety and we're like it's probably not the best environment for her. And also when you do get new cats into the cafe, like we originally just kind of let them out initially and just kind of here you go, free room. Well, now what we've started doing is we get these little playpens on Amazon, and we put them, with all of their stuff. They're in a nice contained area, but they're out in the cat lounge so that they can kind of see the other, what it's like the cats interacting with the customers, and to kind of get them like because if not, they just go into the back room and they never come out.
Right. And
Um,
that's, I mean,
yeah.
even as a human who's been
Hmm.
well socialized, and real talk, most kittens and cats are not. Like,
Yeah.
I run kitten kindergarten classes. I don't understand why they're not common. It blows
Uh-huh.
my mind.
Uh-huh.
I understand some stuff, but I'm like, how is this not known yet? But most cats do not have appropriate, most to all, like I can matter of factly say that, do
Right.
not have appropriate socialization. So it's
Yeah.
not that cats are difficult. It's just, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
even if you throw me as an extroverted person in a new country without my
Right.
cell phone,
Yeah.
I have, socialization
Yeah.
appropriate, a socialization, let alone these cats who are like, hey, not only is this a new environment, but there's a bunch of other cats, plus we're throwing other humans in that.
Yes. And it's very small.
It's not a
And
bad thing. It's just
yeah.
there should be standard operating. I'm a protocol nerd.
I love
There
it.
should
Me
be some
too. Got
SOPs
checklist
on how
everywhere.
to introduce those cats
Yes.
and adjusting it based on that individual cat. And like for the cat that was escaping, I think that that was a great thing that you acknowledged that. And like that's where as a trainer, I could teach that cat to go to a mat. And then when the
Oh.
door opens, that's a cue to go to the mat. So like it's really
Oh,
interesting, but I have
nice.
that behavior background, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we can't all be good at everything. I don't know anything about cars. I can't even change my own tire.
Neither can
So
I.
I'm aware of my skill set, and I have lots of other smarter friends that I could go to for other stuff. It's a team effort.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's fantastic. Um, how are you on time? Because we're already at the 15 minutes. But I want this, I would love for this conversation to go on, but I want to
Oh
be
no, I can
respectful of your
keep
time.
chatting. Sorry, it's
Excellent.
a lot of long.
I love it. No, no, no. I love it. I think this is awesome. What do you find most exciting about what you do with the cat behavior therapy?
I, well, I really love connecting with people. I mean, I think all of us should do that more
Yes.
as a society, but that's
I think
another
the world would be
lecture.
a better place,
Um,
right?
I really love connecting with caregivers and giving them hope. I know this sounds sad, but unfortunately, because cat stereotypes are so perpetuated in our
Yeah,
society, even among cat lovers,
right.
usually I'm the first one to actually listen to them um, and actively provide them with support
Hmm.
by first off listening to them and reiterating their concerns, understanding their concerns,
Right.
reinforcing what they have done, which, for example, reaching out to me, even it, let's say it's a pretty, most of my cases are pretty severe. So by the time they reach out, but that's great. And as humans, we're a reactive species, unfortunately, with
Right.
everything. We get marriage counseling once our marriage was already over.
Right.
It's okay, right? That's what I understand about our species. So I love connecting with caregivers and like I had a consult yesterday and unfortunately her cat is suffering from some pretty severe medical stuff along with behavior stuff because it's all the same to me and thankfully I have background in both
Right.
and then has severe anxiety to traveling to the vet and with like veterinary procedures but has chronic medical issues so um,
Oh, yeah.
and she got emotional during our consult, which is a pretty normal thing for me because again,
Yeah.
I'm the first one to listen to them and then
Right.
come up with a plan
Right.
and provide them with not only support, but help.
Yeah.
Uh, and then seeing how well these cats do, obviously is a huge part. Like seeing these cats feel happier, healthier, and then
Yes.
helping the caregiver understand what pain looks like, how to advocate for their cats at the vet, but also how to keep their cats happy. And
Yeah.
then that plants other seeds and they break stereotypes and they support friends. And even once we're done working together, I've had tons of clients reach out years later and say, I talked to a friend and I let them know this. I use the language you use,
Oh,
and their
good.
cat got diagnosed with this disease process or something. And it's
Oh,
just
that's wonderful.
it's I know it was a long answer, but I think
No, that's
connecting
great.
people, supporting people, and then giving them the tools and resources to truly understand cats and
Right.
to allow cats to cat, which we aren't great at,
Right. Right.
um,
Exactly. Yeah.
is a big, and then of course seeing these cats pain well managed, seeing
Yes.
them be less stressed, so then they're happier in their home, they're engaging with toys, all of
Yes.
that lovely stuff is wonderful.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for sharing that. What is the most important lesson that you have learned in owning your own business?
It's hard owning a business. All the
It
other stuff,
is.
like the
Yes.
behavior, the speaking at conferences, the connecting with people, like
Yeah.
that's my natural. Also, obviously, I teach myself, I learn a lot.
Yeah.
But business, there's no like book on let's go. I mean, there are books, but most of I've read them and they weren't helpful personally. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you might have some great books to recommend, but a lot of it was like trial and error, like
Yeah.
learning now that I've had a business for a while.
Right.
And connecting, I wish I connected with colleagues immediately, actually, prior
Uh-huh.
to even starting my own business. But I'll be honest, in the behavior and training world, a lot of us are kind of where I'm at, where they don't have a big background in business either.
Uh-huh.
Just like in vet med, they have to be veterinarians, they have to do all these things and then try to own it's a lot.
It
It's
is a lot. It is a lot. Nobody
um
nobody knows how to fix their AC. It's like, who do you call? Like,
yeah, it's so I
or the
think
toilet's backing up. You call the plumber, and
I
like the
know it sounds
electricity's out. You
weird,
call the electrician.
but
And
I think I wish it's weird to think about now. And I've had a lot of therapy and I'm a lot older, and all that lovely stuff. Behavior has made me a better person to myself as well.
oh,
But
good.
I wish I would have been kinder to myself in
So
in
true.
understanding, especially my first few years, in not giving myself such a hard time, or even the way because I have a lot going on, right? I
Yes.
consult with cats and
Yes.
dogs, I consult with shelters and cat cafes, and
Yes.
I write, I speak, like I have a lot going on, and I'm always adapting, as I'm sure all of you are.
Yes.
Um, but one of the things I kept trying to do was like, you do emails at this time. That
Right.
does not work for my brain.
Right.
And it upsets me now. Now I'm like, duh. Uh,
Yeah.
but it upsets me now that I try to like put myself in this box. Like, this is
Yes.
how you do things. And to be fair, most people don't do things like that.
Hmm.
That's just what we're
Yeah.
seeing from the outside in. And now
Right.
I'm like, oh, you do email, like you could sit down for 30 minutes doing anything. Cause I'm also like, I'm a runner. I went on a hike this morning. It's like 20 degrees outside. And
Wow.
I'm
That's
recovering from
impressive.
being sick, but like I have to go outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sitting in a consult might be 2 hours virtually. I need to take a break and walk away from my computer. So
Yes.
now I'm so much better
Uh-huh.
because I'm not putting myself. So that's the other thing I think. Be kinder to yourselves. And then also don't put yourself in this box. Like these people do it this way. First off, you have no idea. You're seeing like a post and it's probably exaggerated, everybody. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Find what works for you. And I feel like I was fighting it for longer than I'd like to say.
Yeah.
So
I'm
yeah, those
familiar with that too. So I think that's excellent advice, taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself and just giving yourself some grace. Somebody thought one of my employees actually uh told me, she's like, you just need to give yourself some grace, because I'm always like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this, blah blah blah. And she said, just give yourself some grace. I was like, that is perfect. Like I need to like write that, like tattoo it on my arm or something like that,
right.
so I forget, like so I don't forget. But this is great. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. This is amazing to know that there's people out there that can help you with your kitty cats. And it's wonderful to know that you help cat cafes as well. If anybody who is out there would like to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you? And how would the process work? Like, could you walk us like how would you normally take care of a consulting client?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of information on my website, which is just chirrupsandchatter.com. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook and Instagram where I share a lot of helpful free tips. And I have tons of free resources on my website
Okay,
that I would like a lot of shelters and cat cafes put those resources in like adoption packs. Um,
perfect.
and I'm just Chirrups and Chatter, and then I'm Behavior Vet Tech on TikTok. I don't go on there as often because it's triggering for me.
Oh God, tell
But
me about it. Yep, you lose
manage
like
your triggers,
2 hours of your
everybody.
life.
I post and ghost. But usually, if I'm consulting with like an organization, whether it's a shelter or cat cafe, they reach out and then we usually do a short call because my job isn't to assume how I can help you. I know what my skill sets are, and you may be looking for, you may realize, like, for example, I've worked with a few cat cafes who were struggling with bringing kitties in. Like, that was their priority. Obviously, there's
Yeah,
always tons of stuff, but we
yeah,
have to prioritize.
yeah.
Or I've worked with some cat cafes who wanted to be more skilled at handling because as a society, we don't really teach or treat animal handling as a skill, which explains a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm a tech who has way more experience in the things I wouldn't even say I was taught techniques.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so essentially I would figure out what their like maybe top priority concerns are, and then I would provide how I can help. And sometimes that might be me visiting and doing hands-on education and
Okay.
then helping to write SOPs after
Wow.
educating staff, not just writing SOPs, we're doing this now, because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not how that works. Um, but again, it could kind of look different ways. It's usually kind of adapted to that specific cat cafe.
Okay. That's excellent. And I know that most cat cafes are probably wondering, what's the best way to get the cat into the cat carrier on adoption day, right? Because that's always what we have to deal
And
with.
I have a cat carrier handout on my website, and I have tons of
Okay.
videos on
Okay.
big. So handling
Perfect.
and medication and all that stuff is, especially because that's another thing with cats. Um,
Medication.
we've
Yes. Giving them
normalized
medication.
like cats hate meds. I'm like, all my cats love the vet. My cats are
Oh,
medication trained. I say meds, they come happily. Like,
oh, that's
but that's
great.
something that people are like, that's not a thing. I'm like, my cats do it. I help hundreds of clients' cats do it. So let's break that. It doesn't need to be this stressful thing. There are things we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not going to just love vet care because, of course, like I don't like going to the doctor because I feel like ick.
Yeah.
Um, but there are tiny steps that we can always take to make things less stressful.
That is fantastic advice. Thank you so, so much for sharing that. And if you want to reach you, we go to chirrupsandchatter.com. I'll make sure to include that in the link in the description for the video. And also, you said you were on TikTok and
Yes.
Instagram also? Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty then. Perfect, perfect, perfect. We have learned so much today about cat behavior and the resources that are available to us as cat cafe owners for improving how we speak about cats and their behavior and how we handle them. So that is fantastic. It was such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much. And thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who are doing what you can to help make better lives for cats and humans, because we
And
all care
humans.
about
Yes,
both.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tabitha. You're the best.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Drinks and Whiskers podcast. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe, and leave an honest review. If you want more information, you can purchase the Drinks and Whiskers book right now on Amazon.com, or you can reach me at angeli@wittywhisker.com. Now it's time to get out there and start your cat cafe dream. How will you warm hearts with a drink and a whisker?